Hello, everyone in internet land. Welcome to July's edition of ITDUG's webinar. That's IT Documentations User Group. Today, we're going to go over the process, the first step in creating a culture of process. First off, for those tuning live, you may or may not be aware of what the heck is ITDUG. So here's how you can find it if you're interested. fb.com/group/ITDUG. That is probably our most active forum. You can also find us on Reddit, where we recast things from Facebook to there and vice versa. And you can find Eureka Process on Reddit, as well as if you want to see our past ITDUG videos, we do have those on our YouTube channel at Eureka Process. And there's an ITDUG playlist as well as other cool videos, some of them starring me. I'm sorry about that. Quick history of ITDUG. ITDUG was originally founded as an IT glue peer support group by Tracy Harden. She runs an MSP called Next Century Technologies out of Kentucky. She invited myself to co-admin with her back in August 2018. I remember when we broke 200 members, we were super excited. And here we are today at over 5,100 members. Glad to have you all. A little about me, since I will be giving you some advice today, like why talk to this guy, why listen to this guy. Maybe you don't, and that's okay too. But I am an author of the book Process and the Other P Word. I've done lots of speaking on stage about these topics and others. And I am a serial entrepreneur, or there might be a sadist. I've got several businesses going right now, besides Eureka Process and Gozynta, also an IT recruiting firm, a pro bono consulting firm here in town. And I even run a nightclub, which is a whole learning experience to test these theories on. Before we dive into the material, please feel free to ask questions. I'd rather talk about the questions you have than to keep going to my slides. Brendan is in the green room here. He's actually going to join us and help ask some questions himself, but he'll be reading through all of your comments and bringing them on stage as well, so we can answer those. So that's the basics. So we're going to talk about the process. And first off, I want you to know what problem we're solving. There's this terrible illness all across the world called LBS. And what exactly is LBS? Well, it's leaky bucket syndrome. And let me illustrate what the leaky bucket syndrome is. So essentially, as your business begins to scale, as you begin to grow, you teach your new staff, because you have to hire people to grow, how you do things, and you hand them this bucket of knowledge. Well, we are human beings, and this is just normal. We forget things over time. We hear things differently than you think you told it to us. We develop new habits, good or bad. But either way, our knowledge isn't the same. The bucket isn't as full as it once was. And as we continue to scale, that leaky bucket of knowledge gets handed off to the next person, who is also a human being, and whose bucket leaks. And next thing you know, you're in an episode of Star Trek, and you know what's going to happen to Red Shirt Guy. You're not going to like the way he performs. He's going to get zapped by an alien on a planet, and no one's happy. Not just him. You're not happy. Your clients aren't happy. Your colleagues aren't happy. And that's leaky bucket syndrome. And that's what the process, and frankly, a process-based culture is supposed to prevent or try to help. But there's a gotcha. There's a gotcha here. And it's the fact that we are human beings, and you can't actually plug the bucket, right? We can't make ourselves robots. What we can do is create systems that keep that bucket full. Those systems can be KPIs, they can be processes, they can be coaching, and you're actually your onboarding process. And so today we're going to take a small, shallow dive into the process side of this solution. And once you do so, what happens is you get a nice, happy red shirt guy. Yay, he's happy. So before we dive in, a couple of quick definitions. So that I found that I was using words interchangeably that was confusing. I discovered this when writing the book, Process and the Other P Word. Like, this is confusing. So I wanted to define what these things were. First off, thanks to the dictionary, the word process is a series of actions that lead to a particular result. Easy enough. And in businesses, of course, we'd rather a series of actions lead to a particularly positive result. That's our process that we want. And I do tend to interchange this to the word documentation, but to me, when I say documentation, what I mean is put it in writing in a place that everybody can get to, and you are simply documenting the decisions you have made. That's what a written process is. We have decided to do a series of actions in this way. So let's document it so we can all stay on the same page. And then I do love to use the word culture. And believe it or not, I don't know that I had ever looked up in a dictionary what the word culture meant until I wrote this book. And I did. And it made a lot of sense to me. So culture is a widely accepted way of doing something of a particular group of people. Now, your group of people is your business, and your way of doing things are your processes. Even if they're not written, you still have processes, and that is your way of doing things. That is your culture. By putting your processes in writing documentation, you can create an intentional culture, developing everybody the same way of doing things. All right. So into the meat and potatoes. What is the process? Well, it's the 5 W's and an H that we learned in elementary school, the interrogatives: who, what, when, where, why, how. I also like to think of it as the blueprint to your documentation system. So just like when you build a house, you build a blueprint. That way the electrician knows how to work around the plumbing, who knows how to work around the framer, so it all fits together. We need our entire team on the same page as well. So let's write down how we're going to do our documentation. The who is an easy one. I recommend nominating a documentation czar. A documentation czar is a dedicated person to maintain your documentation system. Doesn't mean full time, but it does mean a single name, one person to rule them all. And they don't have to be the most technical person. They don't have to know all the ins and outs of the technical details of how to work and change security and rights and permissions on your documentation platform. But they should be the kind of person who can look at your system, look at your process, the blueprint, and go, wait a minute, this doesn't match the blueprint. Let's pay attention here and get this fixed. So make sure you find the documentation czar. The next fun question is, when do we document? And as any good consultant will tell you, it depends. That's always the answer to everything. Hi, Brendan. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Great to see you. I asked Brendan to come in and maybe ask questions so I don't just start talking and not stop. So
I went back to the documentation czar.
Okay. Help me out.
So who ideally would be a candidate for this position?
So I feel like it can be anyone. And I think maybe what's more important is that it doesn't have to be your service manager. It doesn't have to be your internal IT person. Anybody who's willing and who likes to be organized and is willing to look at the documentation system, maybe it's 5 minutes a day, maybe it's 15 minutes a week, and go, hey, our process says that the folder should look like this and the document should be titled like this. I'd like to take a glance and see, is that actually happening? Are there exceptions? What are those exceptions? Let me go ask the person who made that exception happen. So as long as you have somebody, I think it could literally be anybody. So at Gozynta Eureka, Brendan, who's our documentation czar?
You are.
That's right. Why? Because I'm OCD. Do I know the most about our documentation platform? I do not in our organization. I ask for help all the time. Hey, how do I set this up? Wait a minute, this isn't working. Brendan, what do I do here? And you help me. But I'm the type of person who just likes to look at how is it set up? Does it look right? Are there gaping holes? Who put this document here? It doesn't belong. According to the process, it belongs here. So that's your documentation czar person. Does that help?
It does. Thank you.
Thank you. So back to when, and the answering being, it depends on when you document. I prefer, generally speaking, everyone to document always. Some people get a little freaked out that, what if they change something that's wrong? Well, I like to think that we hire good people, that there won't be egregious mistakes. And at the same time, somebody won't blindly follow an egregious mistake. And if you think that's a problem for you, maybe you have other issues to deal with. However, as you mature, I can certainly see there being a need for a change management process, and even gradients in between. For example, pretty early on, you might decide to lock down your company policies like PTO, vacation time. Uh, I might let everyone edit those early on because it's really easy to roll back. I want to see their suggestions. I want to see who's doing what. But then introducing change management process later as I grow to vacations until eventually you might have a change management process for everything because you have almost every process you need. And now it's just minor changes here and there. So that's my recommendation for when you can kind of see our scale to the left. It's a rough scale on when to make those changes. And excuse my hideous slide here. The next interrogative we're going to answer is how do we document? And it can certainly depend here as well. I like to create some general guidelines like those top 3 bullet points. A big part of everything we have in the process is how do we find stuff later? And I'm going to drop a bomb on you. Almost nobody is browsing through documentation. They're not going, the folder structure doesn't matter a whole lot because people don't tend to browse. Instead, they tend to search, or as you mature, I love having little things like our ticketing system providing direct links to technical SOPs, or anywhere an SOP is needed. I already have the direct link with the direct search terms there. So they're being pointed there directly. So don't spend too much time on browsing. But because of the search feature, I like to make sure that all of our titles of our documents have commonly used slang, as well as the long name and or the short name of whatever we did. We love client initials here at Eureka Process, so we might call ourselves EP. So I put both at the end of a document, maybe in parentheses, so I can always find it whenever I'm searching for it. Then you might have things that are more specific to your platform. For example, if you're using SharePoint and Microsoft Word to document, maybe you want either a templated document or a template file, or make sure everybody's using the same font size and the same style of writing. The reason for this consistency is keep in mind that processes are not training documents. They should be referenceable and not teach you every step. I want to quickly glance at a document and know what I need. Therefore, I want them all laid out the same so I can quickly find information when I'm searching for or leading it. Even like adding a why section at the top of each document. Putting some next steps at the bottom, like, hey, what should I do after this? Whatever those decisions are that you make, simply document them in your blueprint, your process, and keep it consistent. Now, these are general for all types of documents. It gets a little more specific when we get into the what section. But first, I want to help you with some common misconceptions about the level of detail of your documentation. One, not a training document. You can have training documents, but typically you don't want to, your 800th time following a process, you don't want to read a training document line by line again to find what you need. I'd rather have bullet points. Second, there are some things you do not have to ever put in your SOPs because you have 3 layers of process. One, this is probably a topic for a different time. Your company should have core values, 3 to 5 core tenets that dictate general behavior. This is what I also call the ultimate process because it's at the top of the pyramid. When in doubt, core values always win. If you don't have a written step-by-step process, you still should adhere to the core values. So you don't have to repeat those types of things in your SOPs. 2, I like to have a document, I call it middleware, ways to succeed, where I map key behaviors, common behaviors in our business and how they map to core values. For example, if it's not on your PSA, it didn't happen. I put that in ways to succeed, and I give common examples and how it ties to each core value. Similarly, if it's not in your documentation system, it doesn't exist. One of my favorite ones in ways to succeed is admit mistakes, because I feel like mistakes are fine. They're a great way to learn. But if we don't admit them, we're not going to learn from them. And if we don't admit them, we're not going to be able to get ahead of any side effects either of those mistakes. And I put those things in ways to succeed so that I don't have to kind of sprinkle that information into every single SOP that I write. And then that's when you have that final layer of process, or for my Canadian brethren, process. So for the what section of the process, I am going to pull up a different screen here and just show you a living, working document. All right. So theeurekacommunity.com is a membership site that we have that has all of our processes in it, templates you can download and edit yourself. If you want to check it out for free and you're not a member already, you can download this book, audio, Kindle, or paperback. It has a coupon code in it to get in for free for a month to check it out and download. I then search the process, and for speed, I have us preloaded here where you can see our information about the process. When you click on it, it shows you the template, which we have in a PDF format, and you are able to copy and paste from it. And then here's the zoomed in process guide. Here you'll see our example of where you have the why. I didn't cover where, but where is pretty simple. Pick a documentation platform and stick to it. Easy peasy. Whether it's ITDUG, Hoodoo, SharePoint, Confluence, I've seen them all work well. There's not only one right way to do this. We've talked about when and the how. And then you get into the technical details of the what. Because the fact is, depending on what you are documenting, you might need to make some changes about how that works. So here are some quick examples I'm just going to go through with you. Internal processes, my favorite, the one that I teach the most about, such as our ways to succeed document. Simply put, I want to make a note about exactly where do we store this. Just make the decision. I've had some clients who take 6 months to fill out their blueprint, and that is a mistake. This blueprint should take you a week or two at the most, and that's only spending an hour or two a week on it. Keep it simple. You can make corrections later. It's more important to be on the same page than to be on the right page. You can fight me on that in the comments. Another common one that our IT clients love is internal technical processes. How do I solve a problem? One, I define what this problem is, what this type of documentation is. I caution you to don't use click-by-click instructions. Remember, this is not a training document. Your audience is internal technicians. They should already know how to find the start button, how to find the left mouse button. I also try to avoid screenshots in most cases because things move. Just give them the gist of how to get there. Instead, I like to teach them our way of doing this technical SOP. An example I have here, which is probably getting pretty stale, is in the olden days, you would remote into a server, go to Active Directory users and computers, and reset a password. Well, as we got more and more automated, our way is, yes, you could do that. However, our SOP, our technical SOP says, instead, run this RMM script to update the Active Directory. That's how we do it. And that's how I want everybody to do it in our organization. And note that I give it a little bit of a naming standard. I always put SOP, or actually what I prefer is TSOP here. Now I need to update this. And in this fashion, every different type of SOP that you have, you can add more instructions on how to do it. I actually wrote this one picture section with ITDUG in mind, but I've seen this work for Confluence and Hoodoo as well. You can be as specific as possible. I call out client-facing instructions separately as well for two reasons. One, they're not technicians. You might need screenshots for those. And two, you might need to store them in a different place that has access so your clients can see them as well. And I even make a little distinction between technical best practices, meaning these are not a series of steps. These are just things to know or consider when you're working on something specific. I mean, it used to be like Microsoft Exchange is a big best practice. It wasn't always step by step, but hey, when you're configuring this, these 18 points you need to consider before finishing it. And then there's a piece of new information that I have not added to our presentations yet, but I'd love to share it because we're using this heavily internally now, which is I create a prefix. You saw SOP dash written in front of our SOPs. Well, now we have TSOPs for technical SOPs, BP for best practice. I've even gone as far as our client onboarding process. I've put numbers in front of them, 1, 2, 3, 4, because I want them in order. Because every time I onboard a client, I always follow those steps in that order. They're big steps, which is why I have multiple SOPs. I have another client. They always do these certain practices on Fridays. I was like, okay, well, let's actually write the word Friday in front of the SOPs. Now they're all grouped in the same place and they know what they're working on Friday. So it's yours to play with. As long as you decide, put it in writing, and educate the whole team. Now we are coming toward the end of my slide, so that's my warning to get your last comments in now. So we have questions to answer. So one quick humorous note before we turn to any questions we may have. I say it's humorous. It's real though. But when I'm naming these SOPs, a lot of thought goes into it. And I could tell you, just picking on one of our documents, I was so mad about these behaviors not happening every time when I was a service manager that I wrote a document and I posted it on our bullpen door, 10 ways not to get fired. Because I was livid. But that's not a very positive statement. So then instead of using the word fired, I moved to the 10 commandments. But that was a little bit holier than thou. And so over time, it became 10 ways to succeed. And then I got rid of the number 10 for our template so that everybody could have 8, 9, 12 in that range of ways to succeed. Similarly, I used to have the discipline process, right? This is equivalent to your 3 strikes rules in some systems. Before we actually re-entered the coaching system, we added a lot of steps early on to actually be proactive and positive on how we handle these issues, trying to prevent the need for any actual discipline. Do we have questions, Brendan?
Yeah, we do. We have one from a Facebook user. Everyone documents always, but the SAR is the one checking the documentation to ensure the formatting is correct.
That is correct. And we have time. Yes, the documentation SAR is verifying that information is correct, helping employees coach and train to get it correct the first time, of course. But there's a neat trick, and I've done this in many different platforms now. I've done it in ITDUG, Hoodoo, and Confluence so far, and SharePoint. I've done all 4 of those. And I've done it in Slack and Teams, where every time somebody makes a change to the documentation system, I have a notification going to your communications platform channel. Now, I typically recommend everybody mute that channel. There's too many changes to bug everyone. I don't want them to start ignoring their Slack or their Teams. Have them mute the channel. And then we actually had ours this morning, Brendan, a process review meeting where I brought up the channel. I said, okay, hey, Brendan, I see you changed this document. What's up? And Brendan will say something like, fixing spelling errors, no changes to speak of, or actually, guys, major change. Let's go over it right now. Or hey, please be advised, there was a major change to this one client in this SOP. If you run up against this problem, make sure you're reviewing the SOP and not memorizing it this time. And we do that again through automation, and then we have that weekly 30-minute process review meeting to see what's changed. And sometimes reviewing SOPs takes 5 minutes for us. Sometimes it takes a whole half hour. This morning it was a 2-minute job, and we laughed because somebody changed one document 18 times. Okay, they were figuring stuff out. No big deal. Am I missing any other questions, Brendan?
We have one more.
All right.
Should this process be formally written, and how often should it be reviewed?
Which process do you think we're referencing? How long ago was this comment?
The process. Totally.
Yeah, the process, absolutely, in writing. I would say that the process itself doesn't need to be reviewed just because the process is being followed every day. So especially your documentation SAR is looking for exceptions to the rule. Now, I referenced in my funny words, right, the coaching system. And when I talk about creating a culture of process, The key to that culture shift is that every time somebody makes a mistake, every time something doesn't go according to plan, the discussion centers around the documentation. So somebody, you can't just say, hey, I told you that this document belongs somewhere else. That's not the right way to handle it. The right way to handle is, hey, this document looks out of place. Let's go review the process together and see where it should be. You have to always reference the written process together if you're going to change culture. Now, when you have that conversation, it turns out the process was unclear or didn't cover that case, you no longer have a problem. You have a teamwork exercise to update the document, which is a far more positive experience than,
I totally agree.
yeah. And that is the culture shift, is that if every time you have an incident, you bring it back to what's in writing, and not just talk about it. And I will tell this story till the end of time. Our colleague, Ben, which platform is he monitoring right now for comments, Brendan?
Right now, LinkedIn and YouTube.
All right. So he's looking at those two. Ben's out there. So hopefully he smiles. He tells the story. We first hired him year and a half ago. I'm training him in December. He starts asking questions January, February. And every time he asked a question, I would go find the process. I wouldn't just send him a link. That's a little bit passive aggressive. I would supply the link, say, hey, here's the process. I just reviewed it. It's pretty straightforward. Please follow it. Or I would say, hey, paragraph 2 gets kind of dicey. Could you work through it, ask more questions, and edit this for me? Or in some cases, I'd be like, hey, I have a process, but it's pretty bad. So let's go over this together and update the process together and fix it. Well, by the time March got here, Ben sent me an email. I was like, oh, Ben said a question. What's he got? And his email said, hey, Alan, I just wanted to let you know that I had a question. And then I remember that you always send me back to our documentation. So I went to our documentation and I found the answer. Thanks. What a win, right? Don't you want that in your business? So yeah, I tell that story like every week, I'm sure. So that's the way it's supposed to work. You can only do that by having your processes in writing and always reviewing them live whenever there's an incident. It's always a training opportunity, a coaching opportunity to do that. All right. Do we have any more questions coming in?
Well, I do want to add, being able to have the authority to work on those processes, add the process, update the process, really builds buy-in from your team on following the process that was previously written.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
It's multi-steps here.
Yeah,
if I'm going to update it and somebody doesn't follow it, I'm going to probably question why.
Right. And so now you're also helping build this culture by saying, hey, I did this document and it's important, these changes that I made, and you didn't follow it and we didn't get the results that we wanted. And in return, that spreads. They want to update processes too. Like, yeah, I was in this other document. I found a way to save 3 steps, but they're doing this instead. I love having conversations about process improvement, which you can't do. You can't improve the process until you have a written process to review. Very good. Any more questions or comments? This is going right to schedule on time. Good job, Brendan. We decided that one of Brendan's many titles is also producer of ITDUG, whoever Doug is. So if you were looking for a copy of the book, it is at that QR code. You can find it on Amazon, probably even general searches. If you're being lazy when typing on Amazon, I just type Alan Edwards Process and it shows up as number 1. It's the big yellow book. For those who've never met me in person, whenever I'm out at trade shows, I wear that yellow jacket. And I love the joke, who wore the yellow jacket better, the book or myself? So far, the book is by far leading the pack, and I'm okay with that. Wanted to thank you all for joining this month's ITDUG. Hope you guys, if you're not already, become a member of ITDUG. There's no commitment whatsoever. Just go join the Facebook or Reddit groups and then help each other with your documentation questions. Our team's also monitoring, trying to look for opportunities to add value for you guys. And we have another ITDUG next month. It's always the fourth Wednesday of the month, being the 28th. I guess it has to be. Same time, same place. And you can find these sessions on our YouTube channel as well. And next week, we're going to talk about how to write effective knowledge-based articles. And Brendan, are you leading that one? Are you our presenter?
Yes, I'll be the one leading that one.
Very cool. If you guys wonder what makes him an expert at doing this, you should go to Gozynta.com and check out our knowledge-based articles. Not only has he edited almost all of them at this point, but he's also edited videos to everyone. And we have one of the best knowledge bases I've ever seen for a software as a service company. So that's us. I thank you all for joining in. Looking forward to seeing you out in the wild someday soon, and see you next time. Have a good one.